Welcome to the Thriving Outside the Box podcast. Join me, Dr. Kimberly Grocher, a licensed psychotherapist, executive coach, and yoga and mindfulness meditation teacher, as I shed light on the stories of leaders and entrepreneurs across industries who have not only dared to create their own path in their careers, businesses, and lives, but found a way to do it while thriving mentally, physically, and spiritually. I hope you walk away with the inspiration to do the same. So welcome to another episode of Thriving Outside the Box. I am Dr. Kimberly Grocher, your host. And today I have the wonderful Diane Barth with me.
Oh, thank you.
So Diane, I'm going to let you go ahead and introduce yourself, and then we'll get into your journey outside the box.
Okay, well, I'm a psychotherapist in private practice in New York and Massachusetts physically, but I see people in a lot of different states around the country. I teach other therapists and I supervise other therapists, and I write for Psychology Today. I have a blog on Substack about getting old. That's not what we call it. And recently I've been writing for Psychotherapy Networker, and I have a couple of books and a number of professional articles.
Awesome. So I met Diane, I think, was it maybe 2019?
Yeah, before the pandemic, right?
Yeah.
How we measure time these days, right?
Exactly. Yeah. But we're in the same group, the Women's Mental Health Consortium. And Diane, you were starting a reading and a writing group for therapists. And I joined the group, and we've been connected ever since.
Yep.
Yes, it's been amazing. So I wanted to first start by asking you, what for you do you feel like about your journey is outside the box?
And it's a really interesting question. I've been thinking about it. So one thing is that I did not know right away that I wanted to be a therapist. I initially thought that I was going to be a teacher. Well, I originally thought I was going to be an astronaut, but later on I decided I was going to be a teacher. And fortunately, I took some time off from college and worked as an assistant teacher in a nursery school and realized that I hated teaching. So I went back to college, and at that point I had figured out that I really did love psychology. And I went back to college. I had taken time off at the end of my sophomore year. Then I went back, got a bachelor's in psychology, and then decided I didn't really know anything about therapy or psychology or anything. So I went into therapy for myself, and I thought therapists were supposed to be either psychiatrists or psychologists. So I didn't want to be a psychiatrist. I didn't want to go to med school. So I thought I would be a psychologist, but I couldn't find a school that taught what I was looking to learn, because I wanted to learn how to do therapy like my therapist was doing it. And most of the grad schools that taught psychology were behavioral. But I applied to a couple of schools, didn't get in, no surprise, because I had no behavioral science kind of background. And I went to work in a residence for kids who were having trouble. They couldn't live at home. They couldn't stay in foster care. And so this residence was part of Jewish Child Care Association for kids across the board who couldn't be kept at home or in foster care. And all the therapists there were social workers. And I thought social work was not a very interesting, not a very stimulating kind of profession. But the therapists there were wonderful. So I talked to them, and I realized that that's what I wanted to do. And I got into Columbia School of Social Work, and I got a scholarship. And then, so I was already outside the box. Then when I was in grad school, the philosophy of the school was that we were supposed to be training to do group work and casework and work with the masses, but you were not supposed to want to be an individual therapist, because an individual therapist could only serve one person at a time. And we were supposed to serve many, but I wanted to be an individual therapist. So I talked to I was so lucky. I had a really wonderful advisor, and I talked to her, and she said, look, don't tell anybody but me that that's what you want. And I'll show you how to get through Columbia's program and get a good education in psychodynamics, human dynamics, but managed to get through the social work system. And she did. I had wonderful, wonderful classes. I had group work classes, which were great. I had casework classes, which were not great. I did statistics, which was terrible. But I got a lot of really, really good classes in individual psychology, in family dynamics. I had one of the top adolescent psychiatrists in the country at the time as a professor. So I had a great education. And then when I got out, social workers were not supposed to become psychoanalysts. So I, again, had to sort of move through the system. But at the time, there was one institute that had been training psychoanalysts as social workers and psychoanalysts for years. And then there were two new ones that were just starting to take social workers. And I interviewed at all of them. And I loved the older one. And that's where I did my psychoanalytic training.
What institute was that?
It was called the Postgraduate Center for Mental Health.
Yes.
Which no longer, well, it does exist in a form, but it no longer really exists. But I had a great education there.
Awesome. Awesome. I always love hearing people's stories, even though I knew some of your story, but not all of it.
Yeah.
But I'm curious what for you felt like this was like out of the box, right? Because we're both kind of based in New York. We both practice in New York. There's like a ton of therapists in New York. There's a lot of us who are social workers. Like New York is very like heavily psychodynamic and psychoanalytic, right?
Yeah.
But for you, because we say, we know that being outside the box is very subjective. So what about it was outside the box for you?
Well, besides the fact that at that point, when I was in training, even in New York, it wasn't, so not everybody was in therapy. But where I grew up in North Carolina, nobody was in therapy. And I had a younger brother who had some problems in school, and he went into therapy. Nobody in my family had ever heard of therapy, as far as I know, and maybe my parents had, but it wasn't something anybody did. And he would tell me about his therapy sessions, and I wanted it very much, and my parents wouldn't let me go. And so even thinking about being a therapist was outside the box in my family.
Mm-hmm. What kind of gave you the courage to go outside of that? And like, how did your family react when you did?
Well, I have always been a rebel. And so actually, they just didn't understand. My first therapist and I used to talk about how to explain to them what I was doing in psychotherapy. And at that time, the only show on TV was the Bob Newhart Show. And the Bob Newhart Show was a very funny, silly show about a very nutty therapist and his people in his group who were nuttier than any group I've ever run. But I didn't want them to think that that's what I was doing. I didn't want my parents to think I was doing something so silly and so crazy. But there was nothing else. I tried. I had read I Never Promised You a Rose Garden and Frieda Fromm-Reichmann's book, which is right now, I guess it's Introduction to Psychotherapy? No, that's not right. Anyway, I'm not remembering the title of it, but I had read a number of books about it, and I tried to get my family to read it. They were not interested at all. I'll tell you, one of the funny sort of tangents of this story is that my brother, who had seen this therapist who I wanted to have for me, became a psychologist.
Really? So there's two therapists in the family?
Yep. And my parents were really wonderful and very supportive, and they came to every book signing I ever had that was in their area. They came to book parties. They celebrated me in every way, except they had no idea what I was doing. My mother used to cut out clips of interviews that I had. She saved everything, but I'd send her an article or a book or something that I was working on, and she would say, she would save it, she would have it, but she never read it.
Oh, how did you thrive? Right? Like, what were the people, things, situations, factors that kind of helped you thrive?
So one of the ways I thrived was I really loved the work. I just loved my clients. They were wonderful. I learned from them. I worked also in a locked inpatient unit of a psychiatric hospital while I was doing my training, my analytic training, because I had to pay my way. And I learned so much from those patients. I learned from my clients that I saw when I was doing my training. I learned from clients who I saw after that. But every step of the way, they were wonderful. I learned from my students. I got a review the first year I taught in psychoanalytic in an institute. My review said, Diane was terrific and she's going to be a fabulous teacher one day. It was sort of, I took it as a great praise, but, okay, I wanted to be a fabulous teacher then, but oh well. But I got so much support and so much really lovely positive feedback from people. So that was part of it. I also had really terrific mentors and teachers. Mm-hmm. And I don't think you can thrive without that. But I was just so lucky. But from the beginning, from the advisor who told me she would help me figure this out, and who did.
That's awesome. So your teachers, your mentors, right? Like being in places like Postgraduate Center, where you were kind of surrounded by people who were also doing this work, but also like supporting, like community.
Yeah.
Having a community.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So another thing that's outside of the box, for my first, this was not by my choice. My first placement in social work school was the Travelers Aid Society, which was an organization that helped people who we now would say were homeless. We worked with a lot of runaways. We had very few ways to help people who were in New York and wanted to get back home to North Carolina, because we could get in touch with their parents for them, but we couldn't get money transferred except through Western Union. So we were really a social service organization, and that is not what I wanted to be doing. I did not want to be giving people money. But again, first, of many, I had a wonderful, wonderful supervisor there who ran the program. And he taught me that we do therapy in all sorts of different ways. And part of the work of helping people get reunited with their family or settled in New York if they weren't going to be reunited with their family was understanding their dynamics, making a connection with them, being able to help them use the connection with you to make connections with other people. So that also was a wonderful community. And my social work class was wonderful. The staff at the agency, my coworkers were wonderful. And my supervisor was wonderful.
Amazing. That's amazing. As I'm listening to you, I'm just thinking about how, when I first asked you the question about how like this is outside the box, right? And you shared, but also like how you doing this like in the 70s, right? Like it was outside the box for you because of your upbringing, but also, like you said, the way it is now is not how it was then. Right. Especially for social workers. So I just love like how you paved the way for so many of us.
Well, I was part of that process.
Yes.
But yeah, it was not like it is now. It really it was a very different world. Yeah.
And then the writing piece, which to me felt so outside of the box, but for you, it wasn't, right?
That's right. Yep. It's really funny. Yeah. Because for me, as I told you, my mom was a writer. She wrote all the time and she wanted to be a writer. And she was very, very supportive of my writing. So I wrote my first short story when I was 8 or 9 and my first quote unquote book when I was 10 or 11. And I just always wrote. So when I discovered that you could write about psychotherapy, because I didn't really understand that, but the first job I had out of grad school was in a children's psychiatric hospital. And the staff psychologist was writing like crazy. He wrote all the time. This was a whole new concept to me, that you could write about me as a woman, as a social worker, as a person who didn't have lots of experience. I could still write about what I understood about things. And I got wonderful mentorship. So this guy was very lovely and supportive in helping me sort of thinking about ideas. And then one of the social workers on staff, who was also a teacher, said to me, when I had sort of put something together, and I was thinking about maybe I could send it out. She said, what you do, you can't send it out to more than one place at a time. Again, this is a throwback to another era. But she said, you type it up. In those days, we didn't have Xerox. We made carbon copies. You make extra copies and you send it off, because you had to send them 3 copies, I think. You send it off. But she said, before you send it off, you fill out 9 other manila envelopes and write 9 other cover letters. And when it comes back, because it will, you send it off to another one and you do it 10 times. And she said, one of those places will take you. And what she also said is that one person or one readership or whatever may not like what you've written, but somebody else will like the exact same thing. You don't try to rewrite it. You don't do anything to it unless they say they're interested, but could you rewrite it? And that's what happened.
That is a theme that you keep mentioning, is mentoring, right? And so, and that's one of the things that has helped you thrive. What suggestions do you have for somebody that maybe is, whether they want to do this with social work or writing about psychotherapy, writing, or something completely different, right? What would you recommend about finding mentorship?
So I think the best thing to do is see if you can find somebody whose work you like, and then see if you can take a study group or a course with them, and then participate in the course or in the study group and let them get to know you and you get to know them. You can't force a mentorship. You can see if it builds. If it doesn't with that person, you try with somebody else. But it's really important that you put yourself in a position where somebody can see you and see whether they like something about you, and so that you can see whether you really do like something about them. Okay, so this whole thing about mentorship, it sounds like I was really good at just reaching out to people and connecting. I actually am fairly shy, and it was really not always easy for me. I mean, I was a good student, so it was not hard to make, a connection with some teachers, but you have to let a mentorship develop, and you have to let it develop by being active in somebody's class or somebody's study group and acknowledging what you hear from them and letting them know that you're learning from them.
So I want to fast forward a bit to today, right? And so you mentioned that, you have your private practice in New York and Massachusetts, and you also work virtually in those states as well. And so you're still living outside of the box and doing things outside of the box. What helps you to thrive or be well?
Okay, so my work still does. My connections with other people, with friends, with my own mentors, with the people I mentor myself, those all help me thrive. But as I told you, I go horseback riding twice a week, and that helps me. Actually, one of the things I forget about is I wrote about during the pandemic, these new therapies that are called nature therapies, or they have different names, but they have to do with being in nature. And to me, that's a really important way to restore and replenish. I mean, I need other people. I need connections with other people, but I also need to be connected to the natural world. And horseback riding for me combines everything. I get to ride outside. I get to be on a horse. I do a therapeutic type of horseback riding. So I have a person who is leading me through the process. So I've got a connection with her, a connection with the horses. That to me is very restorative. All of which is not to say that things don't go wrong. There are bad things that happen, and it's not all easy. But those are the things that restore me.
I don't want to just say I love it. I love the aspect of restoring, right? Because it's a reminder that you do need to replenish. You do need to restore. It's not just about doing and doing these things. It's about how do you fill yourself back up.
Yeah. And in these days, we live in a really terrible time. I mean, besides life throwing not good things at us, besides just as part of life, we're living in a really complicated, really scary time for a lot of people. And I mean, I do yoga. I do not meditate. Sorry.
No, I love it. Look, everybody doesn't meditate, right? There are these other ways that you can restore.
Yes. Yeah. I go to concerts. I do that kind of stuff.
Is there anything else you think I should be asking?
I can't think of anything. You did a great job. I mean, when you first asked me about this, I thought, I don't do anything outside the box. So you did a good job here.
Thank you. And you absolutely do. This was outside the box. If you could just say one more time the title of your Substack, because I think that's so important. I love it. And I think, to me, I don't know if it feels outside the box for you, but I just feel like that the topic is even outside the box because people don't talk about these things.
Well, again, people are doing it more and more and more. But yeah, for me, actually doing this blog. So the name of the Substack blog is Aging Without a Map. But that was a leap of faith for me because I'm old to be getting into the internet and into the social media world. I mean, I've been using it for years, and but to do something that's just on my own in that way was a big jump, and so that felt outside the box for sure.
Yeah, and I love the content.
Thank you.
I don't know if I'm your audience, but I have found...
You're young for my audience,
yes.
But I appreciate it, yeah.
I have found it helpful, and I have shared it with my mother.
Which is wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, that will conclude our episode for today. Thank you again, Diane, for joining me on Thriving Outside the Box. How can people connect with you?
Easiest thing to do is email me at fdbarth@gmail.com. Awesome. As a sign of my antiquity, you can also reach me at fdbarth@aol.com. But I think me and about 2 other people my age are still on AOL.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Diane.
Thank you, Kimberly.